Following Chelsea's win over Norwich on Thursday, Thomas Tuchel had this to say, quote, "As long as we have enough shirts and as long as we have a bus to drive to the games, we will be there." Of course, if you clicked this video, then you'll know exactly what he's talking about. Roman Abramovich has finally been sanctioned, and the future of Chelsea is quite murky, to say the least. Hey, I'm Adrian, and welcome back to Rabona TV once again to all of our returning subscribers, and those new ones who aren't subscribed. What are we doing here, people? If you like the content, double check that you're subscribed, and let's dance, man. Let's make it a regular thing. Anyway, today we'll go through what is going on with Chelsea and these sanctions because they are scary indeed. But before we do that, you know what team basically plays like they have sanctions? Because I am trash at fantasy football, my Spitch team. And Spitch are the sponsors of this video. Spitch is one of the most unique and in-depth fantasy football games out there. And the best part is that it's free to play and easy peasy to set up. Just log in, choose which competition you want to play in, select a formation, and start choosing players. Thankfully, they have tons of analytics and data to help you choose which players will gather you the most points so you aren't just doing the whole, hey, let me just buy the most expensive team I can afford tactic that I have been guilty of in the past. And it never works, right, PSG? At least at a continental level. Finally, choose your captain and voila, you're set. And by the way, you can now join my Elite League, the RTV Elite League, within the Premier League competitions on Spitch, in which you can play against fellow Rabona TV subscribers to see how you fare. So use the link below to sign up for Spitch, then use the link under that to join our community as well. And hey, you can win some cash. Thanks, Spitch, and let's get to it. This is where I do the annoying thing where I say, hey, go watch my previous video, except we'll speed run the basics here. But seriously, the previous video I did explained why Chelsea was up for sale and went into Abramovich's history, his come up in Russia, his close relationship with Putin, and how he quite literally recommended to Boris Yeltsin that Putin be appointed as the new leader in Russia. That's well documented. But beyond that, why are they sanctioning Abramovich? Because he's an oligarch. The oligarchs play an integral role in Russian society. And, well, here's my friend Manuel Witt from the Unsackable podcast, of which I'm a part of, talking about it from that previous video.
It's all really fascinating because we've never seen this before. And it's a really interesting case too, because we always kind of suspected that these assets were there to protect them from whatever could happen to them domestically at home. But now these assets is actually kind of backfiring because it's not protecting them from what's going on at home, because what's going on back home is having an impact on the global economy, and the global economy is punishing these people abroad, the very place where they thought they were safe. That's actually really interesting because all of a sudden your insurance policy in the UK, your football team that you own to protect you from the wrath of Vladimir Putin, poof, gone. Just like that. That's remarkable. That's the kind of world that we're living in right now. That it's a very, very good tool to sanction too, because we know that Usmanov and Abramovich and all these guys have influence. They have the back channels. They can talk to Vladimir Putin. We're hitting the right people. It's a very effective tool in that regard.
That clip was recorded prior to the sanctions officially getting dropped on Abramovich's head, by the way. This was at a time when we weren't certain when they would come into play. So yeah, I think you guys understand the point of sanctions by now, as the entire world is basically trying to make Russia hurt. And like Manu said, they are targeting the oligarchs, because they do indeed have that direct line, those back channels they spoke of, to Putin, especially someone like Abramovich, who again befriended him in the 90s, recommended he become the supreme leader of Russia. That's not his official title, by the way. And then he ended up staying within his inner circle. So you can imagine how Roman must be feeling, as according to this kinda cringe image from the Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office of the United Kingdom, says that he has an estimated net worth of £9.4 billion, and when you take away his football club, which he apparently values at somewhere in the region of $3 billion, he'd be yet another one of the many, many oligarchs who have had their fortunes frozen, seized, that will use their influence and their pullback in Russia, given they often control the natural resources, to call up Putin and say, bro, come on, now you're messing with my life, and once you mess with my life, then the horror of what's happening in Ukraine isn't acceptable anymore. To be fair, I should say this, I don't know the political stance of all oligarchs. Some may completely disagree with Putin, but cannot go against the family, so to speak. The risk of Novichok nerve agent is high. So yes, there's the reason as to why they are sanctioning Abramovich. Now let's move on to what the sanctions are exactly. Well, typically, such as the case with Usmanov's $800 million yacht in Germany, when sanctions come into play on individuals, the government seizes their property or assets and it immediately becomes theirs. However, Abramovich has been given special treatment in a sense, which we will speculate on why in a later section. So on Thursday, March 10th, 2022, UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson said, quote, "There can be no safe havens for those who have supported Putin's vicious assault on Ukraine. Today's sanctions are the latest step in the UK's unwavering support for the Ukrainian people. We will be ruthless in pursuing those who enable the killing of civilians, destruction of hospitals, and illegal occupation of sovereign allies." But for Abramovich and Chelsea, they were given a special Russian regulations license so that Chelsea could continue to operate, but in a limited capacity. Some of the changes they've made include the inability for Chelsea to sell any merchandise online or in their own stores. When you go to the Chelsea Megastore website, this is what you'll see. Very early internet vibes. And if you were to show up in person, you'd see this paper plastered on the door. They were actually allowed to continue sales, but considering these sales would not go into Chelsea's accounts, it would be seized, they decided to just close up shop. On top of this, Chelsea cannot sign or sell players. They cannot even offer new deals for those players whose contracts are expiring come the end of the season. But any loanees are free to arrive at the club once again. All money that they receive from broadcasts and sponsors would be immediately frozen. They cannot sell any tickets, so only season ticket holders can attend matches, and there has been a cap on spending for both their team travel expenses and the spending for match day operations. As for the travel expenses, that has been capped at £20,000 per match. No more chartered jets. It looks like they'll be flying Ryanair now. But when does this last until? Currently, it's listed to last until May 31st of this year, but the government reserves the right to, quote, vary, revoke, or suspend at any time. In essence, so long as the war continues and sanctions on Russian oligarchs are still in play, the government can suspend the license. The only thing allowing Chelsea to still operate in some capacity and compete at any time, and can extend it as long as they like. So why were Russian oligarchs in the UK given so much time in comparison to other countries? To be honest with you, I couldn't tell you that, as the UK were far more lenient than other countries. Many announced sanctions that were effective immediately, giving oligarchs no time at all to move their yachts or sell their property, while Johnson was slow to move with Chelsea. But it seems as though Johnson simply doesn't want to take Chelsea away from the fans, given that a true seizing and freezing would mean that we wouldn't see Chelsea playing football this season. Their special license being the only thing preventing that, as the common sentiment, and this was echoed by London Mayor Sadiq Khan as well, is that the fans and even the athletes shouldn't have to pay for Abramovich's associations with the Kremlin. According to the BBC, Khan apparently urged the MPs to remember that there are millions of fans who are, quote, completely innocent. Whether it's fair or not, I leave that up to you. Like I said, in other countries, assets were seized immediately. And as Manuel noted on our podcast yesterday, if this was to happen in Germany and Chelsea were insolvent, they would automatically be relegated to the nether realms of football and have to work their way back up through the different leagues. I can see both sides. I can see how some would view this from the political side. As highlighted by the UK Foreign Office, Abramovich is, quote, one of the few oligarchs from the 1990s to maintain prominence under Putin. And he is often considered the oligarch. So with the travesties of war that are happening in Ukraine, with thousands of innocents dying, you can see how some MPs are saying, well, why do we hold the football fans in higher regard than the lives being lost in Ukraine? And then I can see the other side, where if I was a Chelsea supporter and my club ceased to exist, well, I would certainly be unhappy to say the least. 3, one of Chelsea's main sponsors, that adorns their kits, of course, has apparently paused their sponsorship of Chelsea as part of the sanctions, and apparently even requested to have their logo removed from the kits prior to their match against Norwich, but they conceded that they believe that this would be difficult to pull off in such a short amount of time. On top of this, many are musing as to what Nike's actions could be. Chelsea signed a £60 million per year deal until 2032 with the brand, and with Adidas already dropping the Russian national team, it'll be interesting to see what happens with Nike and Chelsea. So initially it was believed that Abramovich getting sanctioned would mean that his assets were completely frozen and the sale of Chelsea would be impossible. But as the day wore on yesterday, the government released a statement that included the following. While the current license does not permit the sale of the club at this time, the government is open to a sale of the club and would consider an application for a new license to allow for a sale. Proceeds from any sale could not go to the sanctioned individual while he is subject to sanctions. And so that's basically where things stand for Chelsea. Abramovich is left with a choice, and neither one of them, at least at this time, is a very good choice. He can choose to sell the club and take a massive loss of billions of pounds, or he can try to wait this out with the hopes that the war will be over sooner rather than later, and that he can go on to not have to sell the club in the end, or at least he could sell it and receive all the money for it. The risk, he could wait and watch Chelsea rot, and, well, the worst could happen to the club. I think that does it for now. That's all we know. If there is another big update, we'll be sure to do a video, so you should be sure to subscribe if you are new. And hey, if you like this video, then go ahead and like the video. My name's Adrian. This is Rabona TV. Have a great weekend.